the Korean Times, today's issue, has already reported the keynote speech of Antonio Melotto and the presentation of Mr. Kogure, and Anshu Gupta. The contribution is already here reported, very regularly. So, I'd like to invite the audience to the discussion and presentation can be reviewed by audiences. But we don't have much time, and therefore ask you to make your contribution as short as possible. So, please raise your hand and introduce yourself before you go into discussion. So, please.
발표하실 분은 앞으로 나오실 수 있으신가요? 네.
I'm Timothy Ma from Hong Kong, and thanks for the distinguished speakers sharing. I just want to ask a question that all the projects except this one relate with the poverty of the countries. And I just want to see how we are going to have the balance between the government's role and the social enterprise or social entrepreneur's role in elevating the issue of poverty. Because sometimes I think if we take the lead, and what is the role of the government? And in the other way around, if the government has provided all the necessities to the poverty, then what will be the new roles of the social enterprise or social entrepreneurs in dealing with this poverty? Thank you.
I think we should not take over the role of government. Unfortunately, that has been a trend with the development sector. Many people will kick me out, but the fact remains that the whole issue is that why do we go and, after a disaster, maybe make houses for the people? Why do we start working on the roads? There are certain, duties for which, for all of us, we pay huge amount of taxes, and this is the responsibility of the state. I have seen it after tsunami, especially in India, where there was a huge amount of fight between the NGOs that who will make the houses in a particular locality, because there was so much of money, which the foundations and the NGOs raised, that they didn't know how to spend it. So we even have had cases where you have 500 families and you had 1,000 temporary shelters. So I think the balance is something which we need to decide, and we need to make government more answerable. In our work, what you saw, I can just give you an example. What we do the half work. And ultimately what you saw, the well, and whole lot of examples like that. The moment the people, the system, the government see that now people are taking it in their own hands, they have no alternative but to jump into it and finish off the work. So we do the half work. We say that now 50% we have done. It's your responsibility to complete it. It's your responsibility to make it much better. It can only be solved with a participation. As I said, that there is no reason, there is no thing that we talk about either or. When you have such a big volume of issues, it can only be solved with something called end. That's my answer to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mars. Great questions. In the project we are doing, it's really teacher training. We provide professional support for the rural educators. It is really the service what the government should provide. But why we intervene? It is really clear that the supply is not good enough in terms of quality and empowering. You can see the development of China in the last 30 years is the huge development of market sector and not the civic society. And that is the time for the next 30 years. There should be more and more NGO and social enterprise be involved in different aspects, including education service for the next generations. That's my answer.
No, Timothy, a great question. Just an overview is I think there's enough. There are enough problems and enough challenges that we don't have to say it's government or it's one or the other, it's both. And for one thing, I have not seen too many social entrepreneurs that are working in government. I think there's a real issue on innovation, and the innovation that comes from this sector that once it is proven can then be duplicated and taken on by government. But I think we are on the cutting edge of social innovation.
My name is Chandra Prasad. I'm from Nepal. Hearing all the presentations, as Mr. Onso has rightly said, in developing countries, whenever we talk about poverty, we talk about shelter, we talk about food, we talk about clothing. And so far you have covered all those sectors, including education. So I am wondering, in the countries like Nepal or other developing countries, there are a lot of poverty in agriculture sector. For example, in Nepal, 80% of people are, they depend on agriculture for their livelihood, and there is plenty of underemployment. So I didn't hear any word about reducing the poverty in the agriculture sector. So my question to all in the desk, is there any possibility of introducing the social entrepreneurs in bringing down the poverty in the agriculture sector? Thank you.
In Ashoka, whole lot of fellows are working on agriculture. Lot of fellows, especially in India and other countries we have seen, where when you talk about the different ways of irrigation, when you talk about land cultivation, land burning and all those issues, whole lot of people are working on it. And to be honest, for the economy like India and Nepal, Pakistan and all, it's very important to work on the agriculture part. More importantly, agriculture is highly related to the village that way. And if you see the entire poverty situation in Asia, it's primarily that we are not, the development work is not unfortunately focusing much in the rural parts. That's really sad. Because until unless you solve the problem at the source, because these are the people who are forced to come to the cities. This is what we say that, there used to be a time in India especially, when there used to be a pull factor. So cities used to attract people from the villages. They used to come and they used to enjoy or whatever way survive at least. Now there is a push factor, that the villagers don't give you an opportunity to survive. And the poverty and the extreme conditions really literally push you out to the city to end up in a very miserable life. So I think the answer is, and the most important issue is that we really focus a lot in the rural parts of the country. Solve the problem there itself, let the villager be a villager, let the villager does not turn into a slum guy. Ultimately for us it's a community. That's what we start saying it. But let the community, if we have to work with the community, it's important to work with the community in its original place. And in our work, that's what we are trying to do. Clothing is a very large issue even for urban slums also, but a much, much larger issue for the rural part. And all the infrastructure work which you see actually happen in the villages and with the farmers especially. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Catherine from Taiwan Social Welfare Foundation, and I have a simple question to the president of Table for Two, Mr. Masa Kugura. Yes. EDEN is Taiwan's biggest disability organization. However, we pay attention to the issue of poverty. Therefore, we provide a free breakfast to the elementary school in the remote regions and who cannot afford it. So, as you mentioned that the Table for Two program already expands in Japan, even reached India or Taiwan. So I want to ask that the profit you earned directly use the Africa only, or it can contribute to the local country? Thank you.
Thank you for a great question. Actually, in case of India, the money we raise in India actually goes to schools in impoverished villages in India. So it's almost kind of internal circulation. I think we could apply the same model to Taiwan, although we need to investigate what the sort of degree of poverty you are suffering in those villages. But sure, answering to your question, that model can work in other countries too.
I'm Rupa Mehta. I'm from Calcutta, India. And, I found the talk, all the speakers are very inspiring, and their work truly give us a lot to think about, particularly for Gunj. It's close to home, and Table for Two. I'm also wondering if there's any way, if you've thought of corporates and others engaging, and governments in engaging them in furthering your work for partnerships. I wonder if you've ever thought of projects like Sasha in Calcutta. How we can participate in, say simply in the, you call it not donations, which I agree with, in discarding or whatever for clothes, and again for Table for Two, lunch boxes. Even for projects, lunch boxes are required. So typically we only look for help from either the government or the Congress, but there's so many social projects and other organizations that I'm sure would be very willing to participate.
I think both the initiatives do involve corporate sector and government a lot. What I understood from Asa's presentation also and my presentation also. Almost over 150 corporate groups in India and their branches keep doing the collection camps and all that. My only apprehension is, this is what we are very upfront and, useless kind of people in certain things. We tell them that when you collect clothes, please do not say that it's a CSR activity. CSR, corporate social responsibility, is a much, much larger concept. And like social entrepreneurship, it needs to be defined. Like social entrepreneurship also, we are struggling that what is the right definition for a whole lot of people. It has to go beyond that. So for us, it's a regular contribution. What we are seeking, and fortunately, it has started happening, is that just by contribution of money or clothes, it will not solve the problem. You have 2,000 people in one corporate organization. It's very important that they become a part of it. And it does not just remain a hobby or a part-time kind of thing that on Sunday I go to a slum and educate children for 1 hour. It will not solve the problem. That will give you 2 wonderful photographs to show to the family and to the organization. Might give you some extra marks also, but it will not solve the problem. So I think in India, fundamentally we are just trying to change this attitude of doing good, by just being there for half an hour. And so far it's a successful exercise, but whole lot of things need to be done, because ultimately this is something which is to do with the changing of mindset, and it is called mindset because it is set. So it takes its own sweet time to break.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Denison from Kuala Lumpur. I think all the presentations were actually very fascinating, in fact very inspiring. But I was looking at 1 or 2 indicators with regards to measuring the projects. And one of the bottom lines that I'm looking at is the business plan that these projects have put out. I could see in the presentation of table 4.2 that there was a clear business plan. I think in the recycling on the cloth there is. But I think there wasn't enough presented from the case studies to show financial sustainability of these projects. Because we're not talking of these as just CSR projects or charity-driven projects, but they are projects that are business solutions to the type of social problems. So maybe if the presenters could highlight the sort of revenue turnover and the sustainability of their projects without actually grants or awards that they might have got, but that it's a real viable business and that it's an alternative to the dominant capitalist approach. So it's not just about entrepreneurship. I think that's coming out strong, but as viable businesses that are sustainable and that could be replicated in other countries and places. Thank you.
So during the presentation, I myself controlled the time. Now my Secretary General is controlling the time around this time. Only a few minutes. Last second. Any questions from the stage?
It's a really challenging question. In fact, for our project up to now, we still not can financial sustainable. It is because we still target to the poor village, and as far as we can expand the project, the scale to more counties, including the wealthy counties, then the income will increase, and then it can be survival. Hopefully, 1 or 2 years, I can tell you how we can struggle with this bottom line. Thank you.
In our case, the annual budget is about $1 million right now. 50% of this money comes from individuals, which you call a donation and I call an investment. That's the only difference. And we do want to grow like that. We can earn our revenues with a whole lot of things, because we have a range of products and range of services which we offer and earn out of that. But somehow we want Gunj to develop in a manner that people remain the stakeholders, and a large part of people who otherwise cannot contribute their time or their energy, they contribute financially. Later on, once we get a larger approval from people like you that yes, it is not donation, it is an investment, it will certainly become a new terminology. But a large part of community or the people or the rich people or the average rich people need to contribute to the society, and this is one of the major manner they can do it. So 50% comes from people. Thank you.
That was a great question, and just putting it into an historical perspective, until probably 3 years ago, there were very few social businesses that were set up as for-profit and then, but looking at the mission to be a social mission as opposed to profit maximization. So of the 2,700 Ashoka Fellows, probably 80% are still on the NGO donation side as the major revenue. But in the last 3 years, I think more than 50% are sustainable on their own in terms of having a product or service that they can sell, having financial sustainability as a result, and then being able to fulfill a social mission. So key question, I think we're in transition.
So, other questions or comments? Yeah, very shortly, please. One more. So, from right to left.
I appreciate all the presenters here this meeting. I got many insights and ideas from your sharing. Thank you. I am a director of a Dandelion community working in rural area, especially through the alternative lifestyle. My question will be given two persons. Tony first. You mentioned the GK Center as a village university. I want to know how you can find the concept of village university and what is core methodology.
Volunteers all over the country and all over the world to do their immersion program, to do their business camp, green camps, wellness camp in our villages. And now we are preparing for the next 7 years what we call social tourism. We have a lot of exchanges. We have some friends here from Singapore. Last year we had over 1,000 students from Singapore who came to do their humanitarian service, to do their study, research, and to also do social impact assessment. We have a lot of students from all over the world doing their master, their PhD dissertation on sustainable development in our communities. We have an institutional partnership with UCLA and Stanford on public health. And so we keep on learning by also just attracting people from the academe. And we are in partnership with our government, with the chairman, with the various universities, for us to be able to also impart the knowledge to the next generation of students on how to really bring the classroom to the communities, because there has been a disconnection. We only graduate 15% of our population, but they're disconnected from the majority of our people on the ground. So that's the village university. In fact, we are also now doing social entrepreneurship. Each village will have their own products to sustain their communities. Recently, we had businesses also that we connected the business schools in the various universities, because that is the tragedy in our country. The graduates of our business school do not put up a business. They like to work for other rich countries and make them richer. And so this is what we have done to challenge them to partner with our communities on our social entrepreneurship. Is that the way that we can really build our village entrepreneurs is to get the brightest minds from our management and our business schools to partner with them. So again, moving towards the direction of rich and poor being partners in creating wealth in the country. The first phase of our work in the last 7 years was social justice. And so we created a massive community-based platform on sustainable development with a holistic approach. And the second phase now is what we call the social artistry. Every citizen to become a social scientist and a social artist, and moving towards really sustainable social entrepreneurship. So again, it's just opening your doors for everyone to bring in their expertise and to bring in their resources to sustain development.
Giving knowledge is a concept only, not only a concept, but now we put all these free features in our program, including value program, active learning, and with actions. All this implied to the teachers' learning. So I can show you that the curriculum later.
Thank you. Two gentlemen and one lady have the last words. Please, very short, please.
Hi, my name is Sarah Smoley, and I'm actually a recent graduate of Columbia University in New York City. So I just wanted to first just thank Mr. Kogure and Mr. Pollack for really mentioning the value that your organizations place on the contribution of students. And also, Mr. Malato, you just said that there's a lot of work being done with business school students in the Philippines. And so, yeah, I really appreciate that. But my question was really, I really believe there's a lot of potential among undergraduate students to really, leverage the energy and passion, of these kids. And since I've been in Korea, I've actually spoken to a bunch of students, and in a lot of the various universities, and there is a lot of excitement. But at the same time, there's also a lot of concern that a lot of the students are really just questioning what exactly they can do, besides for raising awareness and doing educational types of things. They're wondering where they can really make a concrete difference. So I was wondering if some of you might be able to give some of your comments or thoughts about how students can really make a real difference.
Yeah, please.
My name's Tony Knowles. I'm with SME Renewables in Cambodia. We're doing work with rural entrepreneurs. I wanted to ask the social entrepreneurs of the panel, in your experience, what is your strategy in terms of you're pursuing your clientele, but you have government, you have the old line institutions, the IFCs, the World Banks, the UNDPs, the USAIDs. I've been at this for 20 years, and I've been totally unimpressed with their ability to stimulate entrepreneurship. As you go into countries or in markets, what strategies do you use? Because in the case of Cambodia, we barely have a rule of law. Government is a predator rather than a partner, and you have these other interests at work. Do you avoid them or ignore them, or do you somehow finesse them?
Thank you very much for giving me the last chance to raise a question. Well, my name is Morizono. I'm teaching in the university in Japan. I'm so much impressed by all the presentation. Thank you very much. Someone raised the questions about the division of labor between the entrepreneur, social sector, and government. And at the same time, these days I see, seemingly you guys have already picked up various pieces of the projects on individual basis. But it seems to me that some sort of competition among the social entrepreneurs, a kind of division of labors among the social entrepreneurs, need to be a little bit considered. Now, I'm interested in some sort of a system, how we can inspire all people to be more wild challengers, then to have that kind of momentum later. Or if we think about greater impact on the social sector, we have to have some more momentum, to generate more power or to consolidate individual powers into some sort of the energy. And if you have the kind of thoughts that I'd like to hear, then can you share with your thought if you have? in this regard. Thank you very much.
The last question is to use the Blu-ray and Poland. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. I didn't have breakfast today and I'm really hungry at 1 a.m. So I really need a table for two now. So answering to your question, I always say to young people, just start with something excites you, something small. And those people who are active in Table for Two, they especially young ones, they are excited about this movement and they like doing stuff. So that's why they do it, and they care about impoverished kids in Africa. We didn't twist their arms and force them to do this. They simply like to do this, and it's a sustainable way to have young people involved.
So, in this session, we were able to share our experiences as Asian social entrepreneurs striving to solve poverty problems. Today's poverty is caused not by personal in dollars, but by climate changes and geographic isolation and diseases, etc. We are now aware that poverty is not a matter that can be addressed by an individual or a government alone or a company alone. We, the Asian social entrepreneurs, have to solve the problem in cooperation with the government, the businesses, and the private sector and civil society. The closing is Plenary Session 1. I'd like to deliver thanks all of you who made contributions from the podium and from the floor. Please have a good lunch, and we'll meet again here in the afternoon. Thank you very much.